Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 26th of January, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing yesterday's episode. I just wasn't really feeling myself yesterday, and I figured, instead of doing an episode where maybe I sounded low energy or not as bullish as I usually do, I would just skip the episode. Just one of those days. I'm sure you've all experienced that before, but there is a lot to get through today, actually. I mean, there was a lot to get through yesterday, and now there was a lot that happened today that I need to get through. So it looks like today's episode will be longer than 30 minutes. We'll see how long we go for, and we'll see if I can do it all in one take, like I usually do. Sometimes there'll be edits, but we'll see if I can do it all in one take. But anyway, let's kick things off with a news about the spot ETH ETFs. So of course, you've probably seen this by now, but a couple of days ago, the SEC delayed BlackRock's spot ETH ETF filing. Now, of course, this is totally normal. We expect these delays to keep happening until the final deadlines, the first of which are in May, as you know, and then BlackRock's, I believe, is in August. But really, the odds are at I think 70%, as I've explained, about them getting kind of approved in May there. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify for people here that these delays are completely expected. There is nothing kind of surprising about this. There's nothing to worry about. It is definitely just the SEC doing what they did with the BTC ETFs, obviously for the ETH ones here, but there is that final deadline period, which, as James Sci-Fi mentions here, is May 23rd, and that's the next date that matters. So anything between now and May 23rd doesn't matter in terms of if the SEC delays these things or not. But what does matter is seeing the same thing play out for the ETH ETFs that we did for the BTC ETFs, where we see a back and forth with the SEC and these filers, updated filings like the different the forms that they have to file, stuff like that. I mean, as I said to you guys, we get to do this all again very soon. We did it all with the BTC ETF. We get to do it with the ETH ETF. And, really most of the action around the BTC ETF happened in, I guess you could say probably late October, November, and December. So around 2.5 months or something into Jan 10th, obviously when they were approved. So if the same thing was to play out, you have 2 to 3 months worth of speculation around this or worth of action around this. You would basically say that it's February, April, February, March, April, which is 3 months, right, into May, 4 months. So you could expect this to start maybe late Feb, early March. We start seeing the circus play out again, as I like to call it, because it was a circus for BTC. But I'll keep you guys updated on all of that, of course. But yeah, just to reiterate, the next important date is May 23rd. Anything between then and now, doesn't matter if you see any delays or anything. It doesn't matter because they aren't denials, they're delays, and we've all been through this before. So there's no need for me to explain that any further. Anyway, moving on from that. So there was another AllCoreDevs call today, I believe, or yesterday, and Christine Kim has a nice summary on this call. So apparently the core devs agreed to prioritize a couple of EIPs, so EIP 6110 and EIP 7002. So 7002, you'll know, is the execution layer triggerable exits for stakers, for validators, and EIP 7549. So two of these EIPs, I guess, are more technical than 7002 and not as user-facing as 7002, but you can read about those. I mean, you can just Google the EIP numbers and read about those. And they've also agreed to remove 2 EIPs from consideration for the upgrade. One of them is EIP 6914, which is reusing validator indices, which is, I guess, like a tech debt thing. It's not critically important or anything like that. It basically means that if a validator exits and they have an index assigned to them, that right now can't be reused. So the indexes just kind of go n+1. Whereas if you were to reuse them, you could actually reuse the old ones. And a fun thing about that is that means that the early indices can be auctioned off, essentially, in a roundabout way. Where essentially, imagine you're one of the first 1,000 validators on the Beacon chain because you got in at Genesis. You could say, okay, well, I'm auctioning off this index here once this EIP actually goes in, which maybe it happens next year or something like that. But you could say, hey, I'm actually auctioning off this index here. What are you going to pay me for? And then someone else could exit with that index as a validator there. But that's been removed from consideration for Petra. And EIP 7547, which is inclusion lists, has also been removed, which is kind of sad to see because I was really looking forward to seeing inclusion lists included in this upgrade. But obviously, there needs to be more work and research done on that before it can be considered for inclusion. And devs, of course, are still debating whether to prioritize 7251, which is the max effective balance increase, EIP 7594, which is peer DAS, and SSZ related EIPs for Petra here. And regarding Dencun, of course, I mean, I'll give an update on Dencun in a sec. There's a separate kind of tweet that I want to talk to here. I think that, and then Pota's here, one of the core devs, basically replied saying, I think it's an overstatement to say that we agreed to remove from consideration any EIP. In particular, for anyone listening to the recording, there will be one or two remarks from Danny Ryan. This is not a death sentence. The fork is in flux. So, yeah, even though they kind of maybe were more erring on the side of, hey, these probably should be removed from consideration for the upgrade, maybe they get added later for one reason or another. So, yeah, things are definitely still in flux and it's too early to tell. But, yeah, I guess like just early signs of what the core devs are kind of prioritizing here with regards to that. And of course, as I said, 7251 and 7594 are my two favorite EIPs as part of this upgrade, but you guys know all about that. Now, of course, with regards to Dencun, there were some updates as well. I mean, nothing new. You guys know that Dencun is going to activate on Sepolia on Jan 30th and Holsky on Feb 7th, and if you're running a node on either network, now is the time to update it. There is a blog post here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. And then, of course, assuming both of these go smoothly, as Tim Byko says here, mainnet is next. And I'm still sticking with my like mid to late March mainnet date there. I've seen some people say early March. I don't think it would happen in early March because as I've said, you need like at least a month lead time here and after Holsky goes live. So I'm more thinking mid to late March. If I had to put money on it, which I technically do by buying ETH, but if I had to like make a bet on it, like an actual kind of bet with a counterparty here, then I'd probably say it's more mid-ish than late-ish March. But that is based on these things going smoothly. If these things don't go smoothly, then it definitely won't probably happen at those timelines because there might be a delay in order to make sure to fix what went wrong there. But it just depends, it depends how big the bug is, depends how hard it is to fix, if there is a bug, things like that. So yeah, but that's the timeline currently on those things there. All right, so there's a new post here all about the KZG ceremony. So you guys know I spoke about this a lot while it was ongoing, and I'm sure a lot of you participated in this. So this was started nearly 2 years ago now. Man, time flies. But Trent shared a kind of blog post here today, basically saying, titled "Wrapping Up the KZG Ceremony," going over the everything that happened with it. So if you are interested in learning more about the KZG ceremony and everything around it, you should definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so there. But yeah, I mean, I hope at the time you were able to contribute to this because I remember I did mention the ceremony a lot of times on the refuel, and you can see here it actually ran for 208 days from January to August 2023. So you had plenty of time to contribute, and in total there were 141,000 contributions, which was really, really cool to see. And I remember saying to Trent at the time, I'm like, hey, I bet you there'll be 100,000 contributions. And this was like when it was 0. And I think that was like a moonshot bet at the time. And Trent was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, that seems pretty moonshot. And I'm like, yeah, it is moonshot, but hey, let's aim for the moon. And we went way over that. We went to 141,000. Which is really great to see there. And of course, as I mentioned before, a lot of this was probably people, for some reason or another, airdrop farming. It's kind of funny because I said at the time that even though there's no token associated with this at all, people would probably just take the chance of, hey, maybe another project airdrops a token to KZG Ceremony participants at some point. And essentially what we did is we harnessed that speculative degen energy and we used it to make the KZG Ceremony absolutely massive, which is the largest setup of its kind, as is noted here in the blog post. But yeah, anyway, you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so proposer-builder separation has been discussed for quite a while in the Ethereum ecosystem now. I mean, for years at this point, and it is definitely something that a lot of people are interested in seeing go into the network. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up today is because there is a new research paper out from a few people here. One of them from A16Z, or two of them, sorry, from A16Z research. Well, actually, all three from A16Z research. I forget. So you guys will remember Tim Roughgarden. He has been doing research papers on crypto for a little while. He famously did one on EIP 1559. He actually ended up joining A16Z as their head of research. So yeah, it's all three people that are doing research at A16Z here published this paper talking about PBS, and their conclusion is that BBS is basically good. You can see here, TLDR, our results formalize the forces towards centralization in block building and the pushback provided by PBS. We hope that other researchers develop their own models and results to help the community better understand PBS and its pros and cons versus alternative designs. And then it says, our main result in this model of PBS is a positive one under a common distributional assumption. PBS ensures that no validator earns much more than another from a given block production opportunity. So yeah, I mean, it seems like PBS is a way to go and it seems like it addresses the concerns that it's being created to address. So really great to see that, because I mean I really trust Tim Roughgarden's analysis on these things, because he's been doing it for a while. He did one on EIP 1559, which, for those of you who remember, after his report came out, it actually got some of the core devs that were on the fence about 1559 on side, because it was such a detailed report and it actually showed that it would that 1559 would work as advertised. And here's another one from Tim and colleagues on PBS working as advertised, which is really great to see. So yeah, you can go check out the full report for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I've been talking about some researchers at the Ethereum Foundation basically working on changing the issuance curves of Ethereum, so which is basically a monetary policy change in order to basically strengthen it. Now, there was a really long post a while ago about this that I highlighted on the Refuel, and there's another really long post for you guys to check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to do so. But yeah, this is all about basically making it so that we never end up in a position where it's not economically rational to be a staker on Ethereum anymore. And I mean, as I said, this is a really long post, so it's very hard for me to summarize this, but you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But what I want to do is basically set the tone and set the baseline now about this, is that there is likely to be some monetary policy change based on this research at some point in the future, because if we are trying to harden the protocol to the point where we can eventually ossify it, you need this to happen in terms of making sure the issuance curve isn't able to be gamed, isn't an issuance curve that doesn't serve the best what's the word I'm looking for here? The best interest of the network, such as security and reliability, and making sure that, we're sticking to our mantra of minimum viable issuance, which basically means that we issue out the minimum viable amount of ETH that we need to in order to achieve some set of goals, as I just outlined there. And in order to do this, we need rigged and very detailed research into a change like this, because it is a monetary policy change, which is one of the biggest changes you can make to Ethereum here. And actually, if you scroll down on this post, Vitalik has actually attempted to summarize it for you in a reply here, so you can check that out and the discussions that are ongoing here. But this will probably take a while before it makes it into the network. I would say that it's probably going to be something that maybe happens in 2026 if it happens, from my reading here, because of the fact that it needs a lot of research to go into it to make sure that we're dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and it touches on pretty much everything in Ethereum, right? And monetary policy changes should be this difficult to make, because technically, the last one we had was the merge, right, in 2022, September 2022. So if this takes until, sometime 2026, that'll be a 4-year journey. And as it should, it should be extremely hard to change the monetary policy, and it should only be done when absolutely necessary. So we'll see how this all shakes out. But yeah, I do think that eventually something will be changed here, because all the research that I'm reading on this basically points to the fact that it definitely needs to be altered in order to achieve certain goals. But yeah, you don't need to listen to me ramble on about this. You can go read the post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Etherfi has started its vampire attack on other LSTs or other staking protocols. So they're not just vampire attacking Lido, they're also doing it on CB ETH, which is Coinbase's LST, and Wrapped Binance ETH, which is Binance's LST. So it seems like they're going after all of the, centralized LSTs, or ones that they consider to be centralized. I know there's debate around whether ST ETH is centralized or not. I'm not going to get into that debate here, because it's going to turn into a holy war. But the TLDR of this vampire attack is that if you have EigenLayer deposits of ST-ETH, CB-ETH, or Wrapped BETH, you can instantly turn them into liquid ETH with points without the 7-day withdrawal period. And then basically they describe in this thread the goals of doing this and why they're doing this and who can participate, and how deVamp is capped at only 1,000 ETH to start, so a very low cap, but that will of course grow over time here. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in doing, if you have EigenLayer deposits of these things, you can withdraw without this 7-day withdrawal kind of period here. So this might be of interest to you. I know that Etherfi has been on a real big tear lately, along with some other protocols out there like Swell, with basically taking in ETH and restaking it as solo validators with EigenLayer, so it's uncapped restaking there, and then you're able to farm points because both Etherfi and Swell have announced that they're going to do tokens, obviously. And I think ETHfi even said they're going to do their token in like April or something, their TGE. I think Swell, I don't know if Swell's announced their date yet, but it will be relatively soon. And I should disclose here that I'm an advisor to both ETHfi and Swell here. It's kind of funny because like there's so many projects that I'm helping out now, either as an advisor or an investor. And it's sometimes I forget to mention that. But yeah, I mean, I am for these guys here. But everything that I'm telling you is public information. I'm not sharing any private information or anything like that. And I don't actually get much of that information because I don't ask for it, and I purposely do not participate in any of these things in order to farm any kind of token because of conflicts of interest. I mean, you have to trust my word on that, obviously, but I think I'm a pretty trustworthy guy at this point. But yeah, I mean, me being an advisor to these teams and an investor in them basically just means that I'm trying to help them with whatever they're trying to do here. It doesn't mean that I'm using it as inside information to do anything here. And I definitely am not. I'm not participating in any of these things. I mean, also, you guys know that I just solo stake my ETH or stake it with Rocket Pool. I'm not staking my ETH with anything else, just as a thing that I do here. But at the same time, like I feel like these protocols are exactly what I wanted to see happen with regards to chipping away at Lido's dominance. Because I did say a while ago now that I said that Lido's dominance would only come down with competition. I think I've been saying this for 1 year plus at this point, at least, saying that Lido's dominance would only come down with competition. And all this competition has so far basically stagnated Lido's dominance in terms of relative market share. I think it's almost been 2 years since Lido's been stuck at 32%. And then over time, the hope is that they chip away enough and they grow enough themselves and they offer enough of a compelling product in order to reduce that dominance over time there. So that's why I'm excited about these projects, and I'm excited about the fact that we have a lot more competition in the LST space and the LRT space, which LRT stands for Liquid Restaking Token, obviously because of EigenLayer entering the game now. And as I've said before, I think I've been saying this for just as long. Doing anything like this is doing anything with staking is a slow moving ship, right? Getting people to move over and stuff like that. It's a very slow moving ship. It's like turning a cruise liner around. It's going to take forever. It's not like turning a rowboat around, but that's just the very nature of kind of what we're doing here. That's the very nature of how you kind of chip away at the dominance. It happens slowly over time. Yeah, but anyway, you can go check out Etherfi's deVamp attack. I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to do so. And just now, I just wanted to share this as well. Puffer Finance, another liquid restaking protocol, has shared on Twitter that the wait is over. Next week, you can earn double rewards with them. So you can earn Puffer points and EigenLayer points. So you get your ETH, STETH, USDT, USDC ready now, and stay tuned. And I should again disclose that I'm an advisor to Puffer. This actually happened recently with EtherFi and Puffer. I signed on as advisors. I don't think it's been announced by the teams yet, but I don't want to keep talking about them without disclosing that to you guys. But yeah, they're obviously announcing here that they're going to be doing something very similar to what EtherFi and Swell has been doing. So this might be of interest to you. So keep an eye on Puffer's Twitter account there. All right, so continuing on the theme of staking, Hildobby has updated his dashboard or his staking dashboard, and he's just tagged 2.5% more staked ETH here. And as you can see, there are new entities entering the game here. And you can see here Mantle or METH or Mantle staked ETH here has entered the game with a lot of ETH. So 330,000 ETH. That's a huge amount, which basically means that they have 1.1% market share right now, but then you can see there's a long list of other staking providers that Hildobby was able to tag, and you can see on the column here it says newly tagged share, and even like big stakers like Binance and Coinbase were newly tagged here. So it's good to see that Hildobby continues to find all of these stakers lurking on chain and basically tagging them for us all to kind of look at. And this ETH2 staking dashboard on Dune Analytics that Hildobby put together a long time ago now is still the best staking dashboard out there that I've found in terms of monitoring things and keeping track of things. So you should definitely go check this out. If you haven't yet, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so I remember covering this a while ago when Rated.network put out a blog post basically discussing a research that they did into home stakers and being able to tag how many kind of, I guess, solo/home stakers there were. And I think they came up with a number of 7%, including Rocket Pool node operators. And there's been a bit of debate around terminology around this. And I think that I think that from now on, I'm probably going to start using the term home stakers rather than solo stakers. And the reason being is that technically, when you stake with Rocket Pool, you're not solo staking, right? It is not technically, like by strict definition, solo staking because it's part of, and it's not strictly part of a pool either as a node operator. It's a bit of a funny kind of distinction there. But I think the term home stakers covers people better because you could make the same argument for something like DVT tech, right? If you're running a squad staking setup where there's 10 of you as part of it, and you're all running the software, and you're putting 3.2 ETH up each, you're technically not solo staking, right? You're squad staking. So to call them solo stakers would not be accurate. To call them home stakers would. So I think the term home stakers just casts a much wider net and captures all of these people who are actually meaningfully adding to the decentralization of the Ethereum network, but just defining them in a better sense here. So from now on, I'm going to be calling them home stakers. But the reason why I'm talking about this today is because Rated.network open sourced the Ethereum solo staker mappings that they've been curating internally. Now, this is only up to indices 1 to 500,000, so this is only around half of the network that they've been able to tag so far. And you can go check this out. It's on GitHub here. I'm really curious to see them tag the whole network and then essentially open source that and also open source the methodology that they're using, because I don't think that's open sourced yet. And the methodology that they're using is basically how they're tagging, because it's easy to tag Rocket Pool node operators because it's all on chain, you can see that. But how do you tag like actual kind of solo stakers, for example, right? As part of the home staker umbrella, that is difficult. It can be done, but it's difficult. It's not easy. And I think people want them to share how they're doing this, but at the same time, they're probably hesitant to share it, maybe because it's a kind of like competitive advantage for them, right? It's something that they've put a lot of time and effort into, and if they open source it, then their competitors can just copy that. So but I'm not sure. I'm just speculating there. I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning is here, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of that information come out and more of that stuff go live here. But we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But you can go check out the GitHub. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so we have another couple of entities that announced that they're getting off Geth. So obviously client diversity is still the talk of the town, and still something that is top of mind for a lot of people. So you can see here that p2p.org had said that they've transitioned from Geth to Besu. So I think they've transitioned all of their validators to Besu from Geth, which I think is like 1 point something% of the network, which is great to see. And then also all nodes has announced that they're completely gone away from Geth onto Besu as well. And I'm glad that these operators are going to Besu instead of Nethermind. Nethermind's great, but like Besu is also great. And Besu has like less market share than Nethermind here. But I think that all nodes accounts for maybe 2.5 or 3% of total validators on the network. So these are like, obviously they're small numbers, but when you add them together, they get really big. And I mean, as I've said before, like it only takes a few of these like relatively larger entities to move the needle here, and especially when you add them up. So I actually put out a tweet today, and I didn't highlight it. I don't have it here to highlight, but I put out a tweet today saying that Ethereum is kind of winning this war with client diversity, where essentially in a couple of months, Geth will be below 66% if both Coinbase and Lido follow through with their commitments, and Kraken as well follows through with their commitments to get off Geth. Then we're just going to see that issue evaporate completely. And then, of course, the battle remains of keeping these operators accountable and making sure that they don't go back to Geth. But honestly, like I don't see a reason why they necessarily would go back to Geth. I don't see a reason to switch off. If you're getting the same performance or potentially even better performance from other clients, then there's no real incentive to go back there. And then there are other solutions in the works for client diversity. I remember highlighting one that Petra from Geth shared, where essentially you could run all these clients as a big operation and then just like have, I think it was signing witnesses. And then if one of them had a bug, then it would basically not sign it in some way. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it would basically eliminate this issue altogether. And I think that also there is something called Vouch that Attestant uses, that basically eliminates this issue as well. But I don't know how that works. I don't have a very good understanding of that, but I have seen some people share it with me and wanted me to highlight it, so I'm highlighting it there. So Vouch as in VOUCH. So if you just type Vouch Attestant in Google, it should come up with what it is. Maybe you can learn more about it. But yeah, there isn't just like one thing happening with client diversity, guys, where we're basically getting people to stop running Geth. There are multiple things happening with it, and there are probably going to be more in the future. So yeah, I mean, but the easiest short-term solution is just to encourage all these operators to get off Geth, and to make sure that no client reaches supermajority, so that we don't have that worst case scenario. Because that worst case scenario is really bad, as I've described before. It is not something we want to see happen, and I'm glad to see that there's been a lot of positive changes happening around this. All right, so EigenLayer has updated, has put out a major update, as they're saying, and they said here, as we near the mainnet launch, we're shifting gears. Our next cap raise is delayed by a week, ushering in a new phase for LST. So yeah, I remember telling you guys that the original, removal of the cap was going to be, I believe, on like Jan 29th. Now it's going to be on Feb 5th, and it's going to go from the Feb 5th to the 9th instead of Jan 29th here. So just a week delay, and then also. The reason why they did this is because I think that they wanted to align their launch with the arrival of the new LSTs of Frax ETH, METH, and LS ETH here. And they're saying here that they're lifting the deposit cap per LST, offering you more restaking choices. Previously, we had a 200k ETH cap, but now we're embracing an uncapped approach from Feb 5th to Feb 9th. So it's going to be quite insane to see like just how quickly this fills up. Because I mentioned, I think a little while ago, that I thought that it would fill up, but it would be slower than previously, because of the fact that when you think about the available ETH that there is, or the available kind of like staked ETH, or not even just staked ETH, but just the available ETH that he's willing to risk going into EigenLayer, the pool just gets smaller and smaller each time they uncap it. But at the same time, I'm curious to see, like, once they actually launch something and once the protocol is actually live, it de-risks it a bit, and then it will see how much more ETH goes in, right? How much more ETH gets restaked, especially with Puffer Finance going live soon, Etherfi continuing to do their vampire attacks, Swell continuing to do their stuff there. I'm just very, very curious to see how that all happens. And also, as I mentioned, METH or Mantle ETH or Meth, I mean, I'm going to avoid saying Meth because it's just hilarious, but that has actually grown a lot recently, and that isn't part of EigenLayer yet. And I mentioned just before, there's 300,000 of METH tokens. So how much of that is going to go into EigenLayer, right? So I think that a substantial portion might go into it. So then we're going to see that just balloon there. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to keep a close eye on it, but just wanted to highlight to you guys that yeah, the uncapping will be delayed by a week. So Feb 5th is the new date to look out for. All right, so I should have mentioned this earlier because it's got to do with core dev stuff, but you guys know that the core dev teams have been putting out their long-form thoughts on what they want to get included into the Petra upgrade. So they're putting out their long-form thoughts on each of the EIPs that are considered for inclusion as part of the Petra upgrade. So the latest one to do this is Off-Chain Labs, who, as you guys know, acquired Pry Labs quite a while ago, which develops the Prism consensus layer client. So this is basically Pry Labs talking. You can go check this little thread out and the blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But not only did Off-Chain Labs publish something, so did Sigma Prime, which you can also read about, and I'll link those both in the YouTube description below. But I'm liking this new trend of core devs being not so much more active, but more like, I guess, like, and open, but more methodical in their approach to these things, where essentially they're saying, here's what we want to prioritize, here's what we're going to bat for, and here's what we would like to see in the upgrade, and explaining their logic around this. Because there are 10 plus teams, I think, at this point across both the execution layer and the consensus layer. And the thing is that they all have an equal say, or at least all should have an equal say in these things, because they're developing the clients and they want to prioritize certain things over another based on their own opinions. And essentially what we can do is we can collate all this stuff, all these different opinions, and we can arrive on a set of EIPs that the core devs are all aligned on getting included in Petra. And then, of course, it would go to the community to basically veto any of them that they think are damaging to the network or shouldn't be included in the network. So it's great to see that there's a lot more kind of openness going on here. Not that it hasn't really been open before. It's just we're like kind of formalizing the openness here, which is honestly great to see. So you can go check both of these out for yourself. I'll link them in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so of course you guys are well aware of one of the, I guess, like popular narratives that kind of has poisoned crypto Twitter over the last few months, especially, and a narrative that I really hate, and that's the narrative of that L2s fragment liquidity, right? Now, the reason why I hate this narrative is because while it's kind of relatively true on the surface, and you make and you can make like strict arguments that yeah, okay, it's true on the surface, it misses a lot of nuance. Because I remember in 2021, everyone was going on about like the multi-chain thesis. And the multi-chain thesis back then was all about multi-L1s, like having like Solana, Terra, Avalanche, Phantom, all these other L1s. And back then, no one was talking about liquidity fragmentation. And suddenly now that's an issue because instead of multi-chains being multi-L1, it's more like multi-L2 on top of Ethereum. So it's just like some kind of FUD that people have come up with in order to FUD Ethereum. Now, on top of that, to do unified liquidity or to do aggregated liquidity on L1s, across L1s, is basically impossible because the L1s all have their own consensus mechanisms, all have their own security mechanisms, and they don't have enshrined bridges like you have where the bridge actually, with L2s, the bridge exists on Ethereum L1. They all exist there, right? Whereas the L1s, there's a bridge on Ethereum to the L1, but it's an IOU, essentially, and it's not secured by Ethereum. Once your assets are on, the bridge is secured by Ethereum, mind you, but once your assets are on the other chain, that chain now has control over that as part of its consensus, right? So you can't, I mean, I'm not going to say you can't do it, but it's very complex to do it in a trustless and permissionless way. Do like, and do it, by do it, I mean like, cross-chain liquidity and unified liquidity and atomic composability and stuff like that. Whereas when it comes to L2s, much easier to do. There's multiple solutions in the works right now, such as shared sequencing. And the reason why I'm talking about this today is because Polygon actually announced a new a thing that they're developing, which is basically called aggregation or aggregated liquidity, and they're going to be going live on mainnet in Feb with this. You can see here what this looks like on this little picture here. Basically, you have Ethereum layer 1, then you have a unified bridge contract that has all of the assets in them. And then you have this aggregation layer, and then you have every Polygon CDK chain on top of that. And they can all talk to each other and all share liquidity with each other and all communicate with each other through the aggregation layer, which obviously is very beneficial. And it's not just Polygon CDK chains, it's also L2 chains that can communicate through here. And now they explain how this works in this blog post and in this tweet, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But the cool thing about this as well is that other L2s can actually opt into this. It doesn't have to necessarily be built on Polygon CDK or be built as a Polygon L2. Other L2s can opt into this, but it depends if they want to or not, because they, from my understanding, they would have to basically run as a ZK EVM, or I guess like run with ZK proofs, so a ZK rollup, and they would have to run the same ZK architecture that Polygon runs as part of this aggregation layer in order to make that communication possible. But this is something that, again, is another solution to that. I say issue in air quotes because I actually don't think fragmented liquidity is that big of an issue, especially because I believe these things play out in power law effects, and we've already seen that. I mean, only a handful of L2s have most of the activity, right? And one of them is far above all the others, and that's Arbitrum right now. Like Arbitrum 1, I should say, is very, I mean, if it doesn't matter what metric you look at, I think Arbitrum 1 is pretty much killing it right now, and it's far above. But the other ones are still succeeding too. But the point is that it really is a power law effect here. And honestly, I haven't really seen anyone complain, like any actual users complain about this. It's more so people just trying to FUD Ethereum. Now, in saying all of that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't aim to solve this. I'm not saying that we shouldn't aim to make sure that we can unify the liquidity again, because that's obviously a net benefit to everyone. I'm just saying that I think that the fragmented liquidity narrative is overplayed and is FUD. Because, I mean, the number one reason for me is the fact that, and the reason why I know it's FUD from a lot of people, is because these same people were not talking about this in the context of a multi-chain world with multi-L1s. They're only doing it for L2s because they're trying to FUD Ethereum. So that's why I say it's FUD. I'm not saying it's FUD just because I'm biased towards Ethereum. It's just extremely hypocritical for them to say this. And it is the same people. I know these people. I mean, I they've been around for as long, not maybe some of them for as long as I have, but I've seen them on Twitter and everything, and they flip-flop just based on the fact that they don't want to admit that Ethereum continues to win. Ethereum L2s have more activity than the L1s, and Ethereum L2s continue to grow at a much bigger, much faster pace, and they are the long-term sustainable solution to scalability. They just don't want to admit that. So, it's their loss, I guess, but yeah, that's why you see these bad narratives kind of propagate there. But anyway, you can go check out this thing from Polygon. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so last up here, just a couple of updates. So Starknet is ready for blobs. So you can see here, Abdel shared that this is our first Starknet state diff blob sent on Girly. EIP 4844, we are ready. So yeah, it seems that Starknet is ready for EIP 4844, and you can actually see the transaction on the blobscan.com website yourself if you wanted to. I'll link that in the YouTube description below. But great to see that one of the top L2s on Ethereum, is already ready for blobs. I remember I did say to you guys that we weren't really sure about the timelines around blobs in terms of, around which L2s would be ready to use blobs at specific times, but now it's becoming clearer and clearer because you've got Starknet saying this, and also you have OP Labs saying it as well. So you can see here that OP Labs successfully activated the Ecotone hard fork on the girly devnets, and today enabled posting of batches of EIP 4844 blobs. So they're all doing the test nets and dev nets, and then they are going to be doing mainnet deployments, obviously, once it gets to mainnet, once 4844 gets to mainnet, and this means that all OP stack chains will be able to use blobs as they see fit, as they choose, and that includes OP mainnet. It includes obviously Base and a bunch of other chains out there. So just really, really great to see that these L2s are ready. I believe Arbitrum is also going to be ready in time as well. So I mean, yeah, it's just going to be a pretty seamless switchover. I think once it's live on mainnet, I think, it might not be an instant switch over for these L2s, but they're going to switch over pretty quickly. And then the fees will or should drop. And obviously, it's still hard to tell exactly how much the fees are going to drop by. It's going to be different for all the L2s. It's going to be a little while before we actually see the long-term effects, because as I've explained before, people might try and spam blobs with inscriptions or something just because they want to speculate on it or something like that. But yeah, generally, most of the L2s should be ready for blobs on mainnet, which I guess, as I said before, should come mid to late March there. But yeah, that's it for today, I think, everyone. And I made it the whole way through without editing the episode today. So kudos to me for that. I mean, 35-minute episode, did well there. But I think, yeah, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everyone.